right, MFPers, we have a long one for you today, a little bit deeper. Last few weeks were, not as in depth with anything informative in terms of science and philosophy. So that's what we're going to go to today, and you got to have a little bit of an open mind as we explore the topic of energy medicine 3.0 and some of the things I'll discuss today. And we'll have Joe here to kind of be into your side of the point of view where you just kind of open up with a curious mind and ask questions, right? More than trying to find answers. So let's get into it, all right? 3 breaths, rock and roll. All right, team, get organized. Just going to go right into our 3 breaths here and just to ground ourselves, be in our space, take the opportunity to again, come back to this idea of like, what does it mean to be open-minded, to be curious, maybe not necessarily let go of a belief, but maybe to expand an awareness of a belief. Let's take our breaths. Take a deep inhale through your nose, fill all the way up. Quick hold and slow exhale. Inhale. Hold. Let it out. Last one. Hold. And exhale. Excellent. All right, let's get a Joe quote in here.
I have another Tim Ferriss quote that says, "Never let a good crisis go to waste. It's the universe challenging you to learn something new and rise to the next level of your potential." So I really like this, just, reframing idea of like facing challenges, facing a crisis, and like one, being mindful, like, yeah, this is a really hard situation. It's not something that you're necessarily like excited or happy about, but you also understand that like crises or challenging moments are truly like the things that you probably fear the most are the things you need to do the most, and these are like true growth opportunities. So, I think it's a helpful mindset shift, whether it's something big in your life, something small in your life, just kind of, again, not letting a crisis or a bad situation go to waste. And we usually we think of it on the other side of the aisle. Like, don't let something good go to waste, but also like don't let something bad go to waste as well, because there's ample learning opportunities and growth opportunities that come from that.
I think that's something like we say almost every week, but it's such a good reminder to continue just to always reflect on that. Like I always reflect on something like that, and that's a perfect way of putting it. Be prepared. There's going to be some challenging things for maybe the city of Philadelphia this upcoming month. We got Joe's representing. We got Red October, and so although there's a lot of good things coming, there's going to be some challenges probably if we want to take it home in this Red October a month for the World Series. So one step at a time, though. Remember, it's about being present in the moment. It's something we always talk about, and really just focusing your energy on the here and now, but also creating a positive perspective no matter what circumstance happens, whether if it's, a strikeout or, something happens in the games. There's always something good we can take out of it, right? So let's get into, this actually quote is going to relate to how I'm going to start us off, because I have a very, very favorite character in all universes, but his name's Doctor Strange, and this is particularly with the comic book Marvel universe. So if you don't know anything about comic books or Marvel or Doctor Strange, you really don't need to know much about how I'm going to explain who this character is and why this is going to be important within this topic, because a few things about this character which I love so much is that he has a complete shift of his perspective and mindset when he goes through the most difficult thing in his life, which is kind of what you're talking about, where you go through the biggest fear you're ever going to experience, and like you have always a choice to look at it from a certain way, a positive or a negative, right? And so he's basically the world's best surgeon. I mean, there's nothing that he doesn't know science-wise, biological-wise, physiologically wise, when it comes to repairing people and putting them back together again. And he has an ego in terms of like his persona, the way he views things. It's very much black or white. Mm-hmm. It's like there's one way to do this with the physical body. There's one outcome you're going to get, and he's very good at that.
Yeah.
And then eventually, one day, his whole life changes. He gets into an accident, and now he's the quote unquote victim of not being able to use his hands anymore. His hands are literally broken in all sorts of ways, and so he cannot use his hands to become a surgeon anymore. And he goes through a very dark place. He gets basically no more opportunities as a surgeon. He loses his title. He loses everything about him what he knows to make him Dr. Stephen Strange, the greatest surgeon in the world. And so, he just almost gives up, and then he basically hears about a story about some guy that went to this magical place in Kamar-Taj, India, and he's like, I have nothing left. I mean, this is my only choice. And he goes there to meet this individual called the Ancient One. And he walks in still with his ego in a way where he's going to look at the setting, the approach of how the Ancient One is teaching people the way she talks about it, so that she's teaching people how to heal themselves from within. And it has nothing to do with surgical tools. It has everything to do with energy. And then he laughs at her and he's like, you got to be kidding me. And he's like, this is blasphemy. And then she does this really cool trick where she just like, pow, right into his chest, and she takes his astral body out of his physical body, and he goes through this experience like, whoa, and he comes back in and he's like, what'd you put in my tea? Did you put in psychedelics and all that? And she's like, I took your astral body or your physical body. And he goes, this is, you're doing some magic trick. And she goes, open your eye. And she puts her thumb on his third eye between his eyebrows. And she basically takes him on this whole multiverse journey of all different things. And so she asks him during that, while he's going through this quote unquote trip, and she goes, who are you within this vast multiverse? And the deeper meaning to that is like, how are you finding out who you are and your true self and what your main purpose is in life? And then she brings him back out of the trip, and he goes, teach me everything. I saw it. I want to know more. And she goes, nope, kicks him out. And then he has to completely surrender before he actually gets this opportunity to become, the master mystical, doctor of all, who becomes a superhero and all these things. So the bigger picture to that story is that he eventually had to really let go of who he was to become somebody bigger and better and more fulfilling to service to all life.
Yeah.
And I really just resonate a lot with this story through my personal journey, but I think the bigger picture out of this is one of the sayings that Baron Mordo, his sidekick, says to him before he goes to meet the Ancient One. He says, forget everything that you think you know. And, it doesn't necessarily have to be completely just let go, but it just means have an open mind when you come to learn from somebody who is going to show you this wonderful tool.
Yeah.
And so he had to go through that, and it ends up being one of the greatest, obviously the greatest thing that's ever happened to him when he finally surrenders.
I always wonder, with this story, and there's a bunch of, stories similar, why, the biggest changes often happen, when we feel like we get, hit with something so massive in life. Why does it always have to be, it seems like it's human nature, some devastating news or something serious has to happen before you get that moment where you're like, oh my God, I have to, reframe my thought, stuff like that. It's interesting why we have to get to that point before we're like, all right, it's time to reframe something. It's time to relearn something. Why don't we take the little hints,
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's something we talk about a lot during these episodes is, and kind of with the quote, right, that you started with, is the most challenging things end up becoming the most enlightening things, but you have to have that framework of making it a choice, right? You have to have that framework of saying, okay, well, is this something that's happening for me or is it happening to me?
Yeah.
So again, is this happening for me or is it happening to me? And best thing, like you said, is like this is part of human nature, because it really is. I mean, this is where I want to start talking a little bit about energy and our, multidimensional energies that form who we really are. But this is essentially part of the Earth playing game, and why we are designed in a certain way to learn how to evolve is to go through challenging things. That's really the only way how the soul and the self ends up growing in a productive way. And again, you have to have that framework. You could bring it into a negative state and never recover. And then, your soul's probably going to learn after you die. And it's going to be like, okay, I learned that we didn't evolve and make change. So next time we reincarnate, we're going to continue to play this game until we figure it out, until we become more aware of how challenge creates growth. So it's a part of the wonderful playing game of what we call life. And so what we want to now experience and translate that into is the concept that we've been talking about for the past few weeks is medicine 3.0. And really, this is going to be a continuing theme you're going to hear us talk about, which is, again, reframing our mindset and perspective to how we just simply become better human beings and better versions of ourselves, and how do we actually, quote unquote, heal from within. And so the first concept we have to think about is the true change begins with you. You have to start to literally create a belief system that you are in control.
Yeah.
I am in control of my physical body, my emotion, my way I look at myself, my ability of how I accept others for who they are, my ability to be authentic, my ability to use my intuition, my ability to understand, not control, but understand my thoughts in a way that transmutes into control, per se. And so all these things just come to like you recognizing that you are this very special human being with a lot of potential that's not only just the things that you see within your anatomical structure and your biology. It is much more than that, and that's where we're going to start to talk about energy.
I think it's also important to note, like, you're in control of how you respond.
Yeah.
Like, you're in control of your actions. And I think, one thing for me is like what I've learned is like I'm not always going to be in control of how I feel. Like that's just sometimes I might be feeling great, sometimes I might be, something lingering, some form of anxiety, like, but I can control, like I'm in full control of how I respond to these situations. And that's something I think that kind of gets lost, is this dividing line between like what you're feeling and what you're experiencing, and then like the core of who you are through your action. Because what you're feeling and experiencing, like it does pass.
Yep.
And like you just kind of stay in that steady state. It's just a matter of like, what is your response going to be? Because, a lot of times we give so much power to like emotions and feelings and thoughts when eventually they do pass.
I love it. And that's actually a great way of putting that perspective into like this very specific dimension of self, like thought and emotion. And so where I want to kind of go with this is to understand the idea of what energy means. And so this is going to be a little bit more about the topic of like Eastern philosophy, I'm going to say, when it comes to literally like how do we work on improving ourselves or healing ourselves as a whole. And so the first thing we need to think about is, one, obviously a change in thought, but understand like what does actually energy mean?
Yeah.
And so the easiest way we can start to think about energy, right? Because we might think about like energy from a physical level, like when you break down and you food and that converts into like a calorie, for example. Like, yeah, that's an energetic reaction that's happening. But what we want to think about is like everything has what is called a frequency. So a frequency is a way of something moving. So it's vibrating that creates a wave. And that wave transmits into this collective field of everything, not necessarily things that you see, but also things that you see. And this happens all the way from the electrons within all parts of things into actual physical matter. And so what we want to understand is, well, if everything has a frequency, then where are these frequencies and what are the different frequencies that have different energies within the whole? And so the first thing is we want to think about, okay, let's just make it a little bit simpler, right? Well, food. If I have a vegetable versus if I have a ramen noodle, they both have different energies, frequencies. One is very, very, very low. One is going to be very, very high. And that could all be measured. That are going to give a certain wave response and a certain vibration into our physical body, right? We have an emotional, like each emotion has a frequency. They're going to have a different wave, right? So all the different emotions, if I have, hate for something, if I have joy for something, they're going to be two different frequencies. When you breathe, right, that's going to create a frequency. If I breathe fast or if I breathe slow. So the heart, right, if the heart's pumping, that's going to move blood. And the heart is a very, very valuable tool for when it comes to energy and frequency. If I make a sound, if I provide an act of service, if I have a thought, all these are interactions of frequency from internal and external. So the first thought pattern is, well, what happens to these frequencies when they're being utilized? Well, they're always moving.
Yeah.
They're always moving out from the internal space and external space. And if there's a frequency that is from the outside, you have this thing called an electromagnetic field around your body that is like a magnet. So it's always pulling out and pushing in frequency. So anytime that you might have a frequency or something that's a lower energetic state, and if that gets stuck in your bioenergetic field, whether if you create it internally or if it comes into you from an external source, that is going to affect how your energy flows.
Yeah.
Right? And for lack of a better word, when we have things that we would consider illnesses or things that would consider us being, not in a well state, that's when, from an Eastern philosophy, would look at this is that energy is being stuck.
Yeah.
It's being blocked within some of these areas of the body, which I'll talk about, and how that really affects of like how we actually heal from within.
Yeah, and this is a topic like we were discussing before we started recording, like not my area of expertise, and I'll probably have more questions and thoughts on it. But when it comes to energy getting stuck, I think what's almost like a prompt for people listening or watching, like just try to like think about like where you feel something in your body. Like when you think about where energy gets stuck for you. And for me, I don't fully understand the way energy flows. Like I'm still learning about it, but I know like I could feel when something's a little bit off. Like for me, I kind of feel it as tension in my head because I tend to internalize things if I'm in a state of more stress. And like that's like a key indicator for me. And I still, for me, it kind of shifts me into this mode of like reflection and action. Like, okay, like why is this getting stuck? Like, why am I like, what am I, what's going on in my head? Am I resisting? Am I tense? Like, do I have to just like take some breaths? Just like think about for you, like where you feel something, like when something feels like not quite right, like where do you feel it? And I don't fully understand it, but for me, that's like, it's been a helpful tool early on, even in like being at a very elementary level of like this work and this understanding.
Yeah, and I will preface and say we're going to bring this back to ground level for you guys, and I will for you guys in a little bit, but that's actually a great way to start.
Yeah.
It's like, think about the body as your first tool, because that's what we have the most conscious awareness of, at least generally speaking, of the physical body and what's happening. And so what we can start with actually is to understand energy a little bit more. Like, we can start from a more Western or a biological viewpoint of how energy flows and where energy can potentially get stuck that's limiting us from becoming our best selves. So I start with the number 7, and there's a lot of spirituality with the number 7, but the easiest way you can think about it is that it has an importance with all philosophies and all religions around the world. And when we start with the Western point of view, as if I took your brain and I just kind of took it out of the entire body and I just kind of held it out like this, it wouldn't just be a brain. There would be a spinal cord, or not the actual bones, but there would be a cord. And then from that cord, there would be groups of nerve bundles called basal ganglia. And so what do we want to know about the basal ganglia? Well, if you just were to look, if I were to hold that, the brain and then the stem and then all the cords, they would be located within 6, the brain is the 7th, 6 spaces. Low, up, medium, middle, boom, boom, brain. And so that concept in itself, we know that there's these big bundles of nerves, nerve endings, neurons. So from that perspective, I'm going to look at that and be like, well, there's probably going to be a lot of electrical activity within these points. And so again, we talked about a magnet, right? There's a lot of activity going on. I'll go into that a little bit. But this is really part of the first understanding from, a basic science point of view. In addition to the basal ganglia, there is a major gland that is represented. The very bottom is actually not necessarily a gland, it's actually the blood. That would be considered the first part of this, where the blood is essentially moving throughout the whole system. This is your base. Second, we have our sexual organs, right? They're different for male and female. Adrenal glands. We have thymus gland, hypothalamus gland as well. We have the thyroid. We have the pineal at the top and the pituitary. And then at the very top, right, this would be the brain. You can think of the brain as a master gland itself, but also we're thinking about the non-physical matter, which is essentially, quote unquote, your soul, which is the larger gland. So all these are one whole system, even though I kind of mentioned these individually. So when we start to think about energy, how does this number 7 start to represent in other philosophies? So what I'll go into now is we can think about there's 7 elements in nature. We have earth, water, fire, air, ether, which is space. Then we have light, and then we have spirit. We have the 7 chakras, right, which is where I'll kind of dive into a little bit with energy, but we have the root, sacral, solar plexus, we have the heart, we have the throat, we have the third eye, and then we have the crown. If we think about Christianity, there's 7 sacraments. There is baptism, there is communion, there's confirmation, there's marriage, there's reconciliation. From there, there's ordination, and there's extreme unction. So you notice how I'm moving up this chain with each one of these. So start putting together, like right now, I'm going to keep going, but there's layers to each of these, and you can imagine how each of these hold a certain frequency. Yeah. There's the Kabbalah, which is in Judaism. There's actually 10 elements, but there's 7 layers to the Kabbalah. And then there's 7 laws of existence. I'm not going to say laws of the universe or God just yet for you, but I'll say just laws of existence. We have the law of one, which is we are all a part of this collective playing field in quantum physics. We are all part of this energetic field through being connected. Second law is gender. Third law is karma or polarity, cause and effect. polar opposites, positive, negative. We have the law of rhythm. We have the law of vibration. We have the law of correspondence. And we have the law of mentalism. So these are 7 hermetic principles or laws within existence. And again, notice how the laws, sacraments, chakra, the Kabbalah, the elements, they all have an energy that are all synchronistic about the same concept, which I could talk more about, and how are all of these energies representing who we are as a whole. And then when we start to look a little bit deeper with our perspective, if I start to understand self and these energies, you can start with the physical body reactions. How am I becoming closer to becoming a more healthier and well human being?
Yeah, and I think that it's really interesting because I've never thought of, like, in terms of like my upbringing and Catholicism and stuff, I've never really thought of it as that way. But this idea of things building and going from here to here to here to here to here, I think where I kind of get a little bit lost is the idea of like energy's flow, that it's not just going up, but it's also kind of pulling back down as well. And like how we, for me, that's a topic because like I could feel it going up, but it's like the concept of it also like you pulling it back down and almost like transmuting it.
Yeah, no, this is a great question. I think the first is, now that I kind of mentioned these 7 layers, and a lot of Chinese medicine, other philosophies, there's more energy points. But these, again, like when we go back to the basal ganglia standpoint of science, like this, we know there are like electromagnetic energies within each of these. So let's first talk about the frequencies of each of these, okay? Because that's really where you're going to understand like how energy is going to flow and where it gets stuck and so on and so forth. So let's start at that very low level element. I said, blood would be that gland. We have our basal ganglia down here with the nerve endings. We have the earth. We have baptism. We have the root chakra. So this is an energetic frequency that resembles tribal power. This idea of like being feeling at home, feeling like I'm safe and secure, feeling like I'm connected to my family, feeling like I'm connected to friends. I'm going to give you a really interesting way of looking at this from healing and energy. I had cancer when I was 17. It was a blood form cancer, leukemia. Now, if I look at that perspective in this philosophy, blood is a lower level frequency. And we know it has things to do with home security and all that. Growing up, it was just me and my mom. I didn't meet my father until I was 7. I didn't really have a lot of connection with my father growing up. I had a brother and sister from my father's side I didn't really connect a lot with as much as I would have liked to. My mom was working a lot. She had to. She was a single mother. I was always kind of stuck finding a tribe and a group of people to connect with. I would try to sit at the table with the black kids and then the table with the white kids, and I was like the kid in between. And like with your sports, I was always trying to like find a tribe, and I was always kind of stuck. Yeah. And I had to realize eventually at some point after cancer, like I had to create the tribe, which we do here, right? Obviously you see, but I had a lot of blockages and frequency issues here, which translated to my blood. Now, this is just me saying this. I don't have the exact science from my understanding, because again, they had no reason why I had cancer. Why did I get cancer? We have no idea how. Yeah. Right? And I also think there's a pattern to the universe of like why I actually had cancer to begin with when we talk about crises in the beginning. Yeah. Right? This was a part of my path. I looked at it from a different perspective, like there was a greater purpose for me. So, not too much of a tangent there, but that's that frequency, our root, right? Baptism. You are now initiated into your family of the earth. Okay? That's the easy way for Christianity to understand like where they got their science from. Yeah. Right? I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all, by the way. Let's move up. Okay? Let's go to the second set of basal ganglia, this energy. It's the second chakra, the sacral area, the navel point, where there has to do a lot with gender, a lot with survival, a lot with, desire and wanting to be in control. So if you just do a self-reflection right now, like, do I struggle with that, right? Do I feel like I have challenges with letting go of control?
Yeah.
Now, me too. This is me. Like, I definitely have that, right? Do you have a balance of your masculine and feminine energies? Are you like hyper-toxic masculine or over-toxic feminine?
Yeah.
Do we embrace both? Right? What's the second sacrament? Right?
Communion.
Right?
Yeah.
Communion, right?
Yeah.
So we are now creating a bond, right?
Yeah.
Right? Now we're creating that bond together, right? So there is you finding a way of forming a relationship. And again, that law of existence, gender, right?
Yeah.
Like I said, in all in one. So that's our second energy.
Okay.
So let's move up. Okay, we're going to go to our third energy. Okay, the solar plexus. That chakra, right? The element, and by the way, the second element is water. Think about how water and emotion, that's that second level.
Okay.
Right? So if I have emotional challenges, right, that would go with that element. So going back up now, third chakra. This is fire, solar plexus. This is all about self-worth. Do I look at myself in the mirror every day and go, you suck? Or do I have trouble with that? Was I maybe traumatized when I was younger to like always being pushed, like do more, do more, do more, like, hey, you're doing a great job. Keep it up.
Yeah.
Like this is all three of these energy centers, by the way, it's all trauma.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is how it is, guys. This is where energy sticks, okay? And that's okay. We're learning right now. We're understanding, okay, well, what's the third sacrament here, right? Confirmation. I'm confirming that I am who I am in this universe, in this world. This is self-love, okay? What's the law here? Karma. Myself. Every time I put out an action into the energetic universe, there is a reaction. This is the electric energy, okay? Now let's move up. The heart. This is a big one, guys. Okay? The heart. I mean, if you look at the heart anatomically, it's not actually the way it is. It's actually, you would unravel it, and it creates a vortex. So if you were to look at me right now and watching this, this is the heart and how it moves. This is called a torus. This is the field. The heart's a big one. This really is going to affect your ability, when you talked about how things flow up and down, this is the area. Now, what do we know about the element? Air, flow. What do we know about the law of existence? This is rhythm. Everything rhythm. The heart will be able to pull up, pull down, move.
Yeah.
Rhythm. We know how the heart pumps the blood into the body to create rhythm. We know circadian rhythm. We know how the heart affects with all that. Rhythm. Right? What's a sacrament? Marriage. Not necessarily having a bond of marriage. The sacrament entails you are creating an acceptance and a relationship with both halves, the spiritual self and the physical self, to have marriage in the middle.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, there's a sacramental marriage that has, with another human being, right? But that's the spiritual marriage we're talking about here, okay? And yeah, I mean, this is going to be really the biggest area, right? This is the energies we're talking about, the frequencies. Coming back to that, do you have a hard time forgiving?
Yeah.
Do you have a hard time looking at somebody for who they are? Do you have a hard time with judgment? Are you always somebody that's the first thing you're going to look at is, why are they wearing that? Or why are they doing this versus like, oh, that's what they're doing in this moment, accepting them for who they are. Yeah. Accepting you for who you are too. That's a hard one. Moving up, all right? So are we getting the frequencies so far? Just recap. These are lower frequencies, tribal power, right? Groups. Moving up or going into gender, emotional energy frequencies. We have self-worth energy, right? Pride, honor, loyalty. We have acceptance, forgiveness, right? Energy here. And now we're moving up to these higher dimensions of energetic self. Again, there's nerve endings and everything that are receptive to these energies. So now the throat. All right? I'm going to do that right now because I just cleared some energy. I moved energy out of there, expressive. So sound is very, very potent. There's a lot of, if you're interested in how sound works as an energy healing itself, look up cymatics. And so every time I speak a word, right, that has a vibration to it. That's the law of existence here, vibration. So when I say a word that comes out of my mouth, that creates a very projectile force into the collective quantum field of energy. So your words, if you look at people who sing, you look at really good singers, and if you now start to look at them like Taylor Swift, she's tapped in the spirit. She's tapped in the spirit. Harry Styles tapped in the spirit because they can project. They are expressing, for them, those two I use because they're expressing who they really are. Being authentic is really important with this energy center. It's like you have the ability to express who you are, and it's not from these lower energy, it's all from spirit that comes out. And how you do that could be through movement, it could be through sound and voice. What's the sacrament here, right? Reconciliation. You are reconciling. You speak to the priest your sins. You are cleansing. So this is another part of this throat chakra. It's a cleansing mechanism, right? You really want to cleanse yourself and you're feeling stuck with energy. You know what you should go do? What I used to do when I was a kid, when I was pissed off at my parents or my mom.
Go scream.
I'll put my head in the pillow and I scream. Or I'm playing a video game and I'm playing Madden and I'm getting my butt beat up here and I'm not having a good time. I scream in my pillow.
There is something very therapeutic about that release. Once you get that, it's almost like it's like a reset, right? Like you just let it out, man.
When we talk about healing comes from within, go yell. Okay? Right? You are in control of that. All right, 2 more. Okay? Third eye, this energy here. Again, these are a little bit higher level dimensions. So the third eye chakra, this is about light. So even all of these energies, they have a frequency that vibrates and that also emits a light. So we have red, orange, yellow, green, blue. This is purple. But this is not just in terms of the color of light, but from a photon energetic perspective, like how light is within everything. So if I'm tapped into this energy in the law of correspondence, I am just simply looking at life as a reflection of myself. The light within me is the light within you. I'm sure you've probably heard that within every religious text. Yeah. Literally, light, the scientific photon, light, everything is made of. And so when I said the other week, the idea of as above, so below, right? You are the microcosm within the macrocosm. If you were to put, and they already did this in science, an electromagnetic receptor of the earth and seeing how the earth is moving energy, it looks like a human body, the Van Allen belt, if you look that up. So as above, so below, right? The way we're moving energy in this toroidal field. Anyway, getting too off track there, right? But then that energy here, it all comes from intuition, knowledge, wisdom, right? You have access to this very, very potent energy that has things to do with say for example, I'm at a stop sign or I'm at a stoplight and I might not be paying attention to the light, but I just intuitively know that the light turned green, so I look up and it's perfect timing.
Yeah.
Right? One, you have receptors that maybe probably noticed that there was light and you looked up and it was light and it changed green, but there's energy that is moving that is giving you the feedback that it happens. So this is all the pineal gland. And really what you look for with like an energetic blockage here is like, do I feel like do you have a trust issue? Like, am I not trusting my intuition, right? Literally just intuitive thoughts. And then this leads us to the last one, your crown, the last energy, which is not necessarily, when we hold the brain, it's the last one here, but this is literally your higher self, I would say in spiritual sayings, like your soul, right? And we have, again, the sacrament, which is like life after death, right? But you're also kind of like pulling yourself back to like fix all your rights from your wrongs in that sacrament. But, spirit is who you really are. This is thought form. So every thought form comes from the collective consciousness of spirit, and it's a download. And then you start to receive that download in a certain way based off of your conditioning. So how do we start to work with thought form? And science has even proved this, that thought form can turn into matter. Thoughts can actually create, obviously, neural pathways. They have experimented with how thought created light. And so I have a thought, and then also I forgot with this gland here, this is also about service. We talk about the sacrament of ordination.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about being a priest or a nun. It's about literally taking thought form, your higher self, and putting higher self into service. We talked about that when it came to like passions and manifesting a reality.
Yeah.
Passions now become service, because that's true form of myself. And I'm expressing, I'm accepting, I feel power towards myself and what I'm doing, and confidence. It is allowing me to feel balanced. I'm understanding my emotions, and now I'm creating a source of oneness and security with myself. And so now, when it comes to your general question that we started with, right, you said, well, how do I understand how these flow and how these go? Well, the first thing you need to start thinking about, like you said, with your body scan, like, where do I feel like my body holds physically holds tension and energy? Or maybe you have blood work done and maybe it's all internal energy in your stomach or your liver, or maybe it's in your heart and you have, or maybe I have, a mental thing, right? Maybe there's family history of, dementia. Well, is that a generational thing, or maybe is that a generational energy blockage that is continued? Because it will continue. Energy just doesn't go. It continues, and it will get stuck from generation to generation in these certain energy points. And if we don't create an awareness first where we're starting to feel, or where we maybe know where we might have energy to be stuck in blockages, that's number one. And then we start to understand the frequency of all these. And so once I understand the frequency of what allows these to open, and then I can start to learn how to have them to flow through the heart center, because I'm just accepting all that what is.
Yeah. I think, what I would try to, remind people who are, learning about this for the first time or early on, is that it's not, allowing opening up a blockage is not an easy process.
Mm-hmm.
That it does take work, it does take time, and it does require patience. And this is something that there's no quick fix to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a long journey. It takes a lot of just process, a long journey of surrendering and trusting and remaining open no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not easy, and you have to give yourself some grace, and you have to be patient with the process.
No, you're 100% right. And I think right now the idea is, I just went off on a tangent of a lot of philosophy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's scientific truth to everything that I said, and I'll proudly say that. But where do we bring this back to ground level for you guys, right?
Yeah.
Because you need to know, well, one, again, come back to I am in control of myself, my destiny, my health. And so, the biggest thing is like we're trying to help evolve the collective mindset of like this is preventative healthcare one.
Yeah.
And it's not always going to be, and like we want to balance that too, because like I also want to say like I told my story of cancer, but like it was an acute form of cancer. Like I needed to get chemo. Like I couldn't have simply, and I'll give you an example. Like if you guys have ever heard of forest bathing, right? It's a real thing. Like it sounds fun.
Awesome.
Sounds awesome, right? You love it, gardening guru.
Yeah,
but it's like
awesome.
You literally put yourself in a frequency environment that's vibrating at a high frequency from plants and nature that emit that energetic frequency into your cellular structure that will change you from a cellular standpoint. So say if I have an illness like cancer, but it's slow growing and I forest bathe 24/7 for a year, well then, yeah, I will probably see a frequency change in myself, but that's not practical.
Yeah.
So I needed chemotherapy to kill cancer, even though chemotherapy was killing me at the same time. So I needed tools of energy to heal myself from chemo afterward. So the idea is, like, again, that was me taking action back on my preventative health and not creating a narrative in my head that I was a victim to what happened to me. And again, this is just my journey. It's going to vary upon so many others, and not everybody makes it out, like we talked about with crisis. Yeah. So the bigger picture for you guys is to know, all right, here's the big thing. I hope I didn't lose you too much yet, all right? We're almost done. You are already doing what you need to do by understanding your blockages and helping you clear out just by showing up here at CrossFit. What? You're telling me all those things I just said, that the 7 energies and all these things flowing and going are actually happening to you every single time you walk in here to the gym? Well, yes, maybe, or no. It depends. What's your perspective? How are you coming in here? How's your mind? Right? What's your perspective? So let's just break this down. We're going to talk about, I call them the 7 sacred truths of fitness, or CrossFit. This is CrossFit anatomy that relates how we bring into this energetic field of health, but also a little bit of, the biological too. So let's start. When you do CrossFit, right? Community, a tribe. Yep. We all would agree on that, right? Like every time you come in here, we try to create an energetic atmosphere that makes you feel like you are part of something. That's that root energy there, right? Obviously, when you squat too, right? You're working that trunk and those legs, right? That's root chakra energy right there, guys. We did some squats today. Second, survival and control. Well, the more physically fit I improve upon, right, I get, the more I feel like I can survive. I can live longer. Second energy. I'm also learning a little bit about, how I can express both, a little bit more masculine and feminine energy. I feel like I am understanding how I desire physical fitness and then applying that to other parts of my life. We have going up, like you feel a sense of confidence. You have the choice to feel that, by the way. You could walk out of here and be like, I didn't get better, or you'd be like, I got 1% better. I showed up today. That's the confidence. That's that power center. That's the energy right here. And now I move up. The idea of being open, right? You're coming in and you're doing a workout every time that's unknown and unknowable sometimes, right? So many new variants and elements. So are you being open and accepting of what's being taught to you without judgment? I'm sure you guys probably judge a lot of the workouts, but that's that energy frequency that resonates here. Yeah. Every time you're here, you're cleansing. You are creating a biological cleanse, obviously through movement internally, but you're expressing yourself when you do any sort of exercise here. It's a form of physical expression that makes you feel more fulfilled. Then we go into the higher mental areas, right? Your awareness, your perspective of life, right? You maybe leave the gym and you just have a different way of how you view things. You're more aware. Maybe you notice things a little bit more from when you came into the gym versus when you left. And then lastly, you create a different thought process of like, you know, how you just view things and what your thought, how your mental capability is with dealing with things on a day-to-day basis. Does this allow you to process your thoughts in a different way when you come in here? And you're probably already going through mental processes and thoughts during your workout that are allowing you to overcome, you know, self-confidence and all those things that you're going through throughout that whole experience.
And, you know, I think a lot of people, without like looking at it at this level, you know, people feel this, you know, this energetic shift. Like there's a reason, like even if you're not going deep into it at all, like there's a reason why, like everyone will say like, hey, like if you move, you'll feel better. Like there's like this stuff isn't, you know, this isn't new, right? Like people, like your energy is better, your mood is better after you move. And like, it's just, for me, you know, it's interesting, like looking at it like, okay, but like this is like really what goes into why. Like this is the how and why behind like, oh, like, yeah, my mood's better, I'm more energized, like I feel good, I'm nicer to others, I'm better at work, I'm better with my family when I go to the gym. Like you hear that stuff all the time.
Love it. Yeah, and it's totally, you know, up to you with how you want to perceive it. Obviously, you know, you never really are going to need to think about it this deep. However, I think the challenge is for you guys is to start thinking deeper. I think in general, our society would benefit, and this is something I'm really going to stick by, is do we take that opportunity to look at things sometimes, not all the time. I mean, I think deep about everything all the time because that's just who I am, but sometimes we should, because that allows us to give a better perspective and understanding of who we are. And that's really what we're trying to get at here, guys, is just allowing you to know more about yourself so that you can start to continue to take more action and realize that you are in control of everything. And that's not going to resonate with everybody, but start looking at those energies, right? And again, like I said, a lot of these blockages are probably going to happen at these ground levels, a little bit in here, and then, you know, we're already getting stuff moving in here, but it's just your ability to translate it. So I think for the most part, we'll end it on is just like keep you guys curious, right? I mean, take with what I said with a grain of salt if you'd like. And then this is how we continue to really make some deeper meaning and change and progress in my belief, right? I'm already talking about belief systems. I just talked to you guys about it, but yeah, in a way that I think there's still a lot I have to learn. There's still a lot I have to continue to explore, and I'm continuing to explore and willing to explore. So we'll hear more about it in the future, and you know, that's why you got Coach Joe here to keep it at ground level for you.
That's right. Yeah, just keep thinking, like think about your own life. Like, you know, is there any place in life you feel like you're stuck? You know, and I think that's a good first thing to think about, because I don't know if there's anybody who feels like they got it all perfect. Like we're all we're all stuck on something. Like what are you stuck on? And that you could start at that level. You know?
Perfect. Start thinking, team. All right. Well, again, appreciate you guys for listening to this whole episode. I know there's a lot going on, so we'll end it on a fun note. You know, Phillies are getting started this upcoming weekend, so again, coming back to Philly Pride here. All right. Well, that's it, team. All right. Have a great one. Thanks for listening. Peace.